Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to present AI and the question of trust from binary thinking to nuanced choices. I'm Alyssa Lefaivre Škopac. I'm the Director of AI Trust and Safety at the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute. At AMI, we have a trust and safety research program that is really looking at the types of risks and opportunities with AI, the type of research we can contribute to the field to not only help AI solutions be safer and more explainable and clear to people using them, but also to promote productivity, innovation, and adoption. So, tough to cover this topic in about 10 minutes. Like AI and the question of trust is a massive topic. But what I'm hoping to do today is give some. Oh, I have a very fluffy cat. She's interested. She cares about AI and trust too. Anyway, so I think when we think about AI and trust and the way we go about the conversation, I'm hoping to give more thoughtfulness, some nuance, some mental models that we can all work with, so that as we go into the world and start to discuss these things, we have more clarity on the dimensions, because trust is one of the most important and most fragile dimensions of AI. It is often kind of being framed as a yes or no question. Do we trust AI or not? But my argument is trust doesn't work that way. It's layered, contextual, and built or broken in very specific ways. And the reality is, this is a bit of a false binary: safety and trust, innovation, safety and progress. And ultimately, I don't blame people for this. Our brains love shortcuts. This is a really hard topic, and we simplify complex things into binaries because it feels easier to process. And a lot of this is harder to process. It's hard to process because it's fast moving, it's complex. It hits some of our human emotions about what makes us human and what makes us intelligent. But it shows up in this binary way: safe or unsafe, pro innovation, anti innovation. And it's actually a big part of what's eroding trust in AI. And the numbers are showing this clearly. Trust is going down globally while worry is rising. But that doesn't tell me that we need more technology. It just needs that people need confidence that it's being used responsibly. And people don't have that confidence right now. And I'm in Canada, I'm in Alberta. The gap is even more stark. Trust in AI here is far below the global average, and many people are rejecting this AI innovation outright, which has severe consequences. It's not just a perception issue, but it's a big barrier to adoption, competitiveness, and the way we build and grow our ecosystem that aligns with our values. So I want to paint a picture here. It's pretty stark. I think the left side is, maybe overly rosy, but what we've seen what happens when safety is ignored. Nuclear is a really great example. Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, it eroded trust so deeply, it stalled innovation with this energy source for decades. Actually, until recently, and all of a sudden, AI is very energy hungry, and so we're re-examining this opportunity. But the same risks exist with AI. One high profile or a few high profile failures could undermine trust for years to come. I would argue some of these failures are already coming to the forefront. And frankly, that really bums me out. I think there's some really amazing things happening with AI. I was out at dinner yesterday with a doctor who basically changed his entire career because he saw his ability to, um, create diagnosis for endometriosis. That it's actually was a female doctor. He was helping with preterm births. There was amazing people at this dinner, and the doctor that was working on endometriosis detection was like, I can literally change women's lives with AI, but this trust question is causing me issues because people hear AI and they're not confident in it. I want to pull another lesson from aviation. In about around the 70s, 1970, aviation saw about 4 fatal crashes per 1 million flights. That's actually pretty high, but not as high as maybe some people might expect. But by 2023, that dropped to 0.23, an 84 or 94% reduction, and global air traffic grew tenfold. So things that helped this were black boxes, mandatory incident reporting were central to this progress. And they took accidents, near misses, things that were happening, turned it into data, and created a culture of learning and building on public trust. This is surrounded by regulations, standards, and an entire assurance ecosystem. But this trust also made it possible to introduce automation and new aircraft systems. And I would argue in AI, we need the same kind of culture, transparency, and reporting infrastructure to build confidence before crises happen. And I'll get to this in a little bit, but I also think we can think about the trade-offs. Do we as a society think that air travel is a net benefit? I like to also think about transportation. We don't ever say, like, I have trust in transportation. That would seem like a completely absurd oversimplification. Walking, biking, driving, like, what do you mean by transportation? Each comes with a different risk and different safeguards. The same is true for AI, even at the level of, a seatbelt for a man versus a seatbelt for a woman versus a child. All of these things are quite nuanced and complex. And when we roll it up to safety and transportation, uh, that feels very, very strange. And I would offer that the same is true for AI. We consider the elements and then we put trust in systems like seatbelts, traffic laws, crosswalks, but it depends on the context. And some ways offer more risk than others. And we have to consider the trade off for those risks. Car accidents happen, but we have to get to work. So, you know, when one of the things I'm going to kind of get to is how do we do that? How do we grapple with the trade offs? How do we put as much in place to make it safe, but ultimately understand that it's a very challenging, complex dynamic when it comes to trust? And I was getting to this kind of with the transportation example, but context is everything. The same technology can be used in one place and be, acceptable to some people, but used in another context, it becomes challenging. So I love facial recognition to unlock my phone. To unlock my phone, it works really, really well. But when I think about facial recognition in an airport, you know, I travel a lot, so I really love how seamlessly I can, get through the airport. But I've personally, as a white woman, never been discriminated against at an airport. So my experience there is a little bit different. Facial recognition in crowd control at concerts might make sense. We've seen terrorist attacks, we've seen a lot of things happening in these public events that put people at risk. But at the same time, there's like incidents where at Madison Square Garden, someone is turned away at the door because someone's firm has a lawsuit against Madison Square Garden. And then when you look at it kind of maybe at the most extreme example for something like citizen surveillance, um, I would offer that a lot of people would have an issue with facial recognition in that context. So all the way from, unlocking my phone to citizen surveillance is underpinned by the same technology. And people are thinking about some of these things the same. So they get concerned about facial recognition with citizen surveillance, or another example would be deep fakes or nudifying apps, and some of this kind of really egregious breaches of trust when we see the technology deployed in these ways. But then they apply that reverse halo to contexts that really, really AI might be substantially better than what we're doing now in healthcare, for example. And so, I really want to get to the crux of what is the nuance here? What are the trade offs and what are the incentives? So, trust isn't binary. It is developed amongst a system of trade offs. It has to kind of live in that gray dynamic area. But one of the things that I think is missing from the dialogue is we're not talking about the upside in the same way. We need to show the benefits, especially in certain contexts, alongside the risks. And not all harm is intentional. I think, people are concerned about bad actors, and that's very valid, but trust can be eroded by accidents and people that just don't know the right things to put in place to mitigate some of those potential risks. I've already kind of harped on this. Context is everything. It also is what makes it really, really hard to manage and assure and regulate. And knowing your thresholds around what is acceptable or not is different. And I think I alluded to this, but organizations, people, and communities all have a different tolerance for risk and a different like threshold to build trust. If you've been discriminated against, if your data has been used against you, if you've been hurt by the power systems in place, I can only understand why, when you look at the power brokers building and deploying AI, you might have some limitations on your trust. And building trust also means showing how risks are actively managed. And it's fragile. It is, this title of the slide used to be like, why is this so hard? Because it's about defining values and how we want to go about this. Whose values, whose thresholds, who sets the baseline, and who is in power. Lived experience shapes perception. And frankly, like unclear risks, like we don't know all the risks. We don't know how likely they are. We don't know actually all the challenges in measurement. Trustworthiness is hard to quantify. And we're still kind of exploring and doing research into the capabilities and the mitigations, which is a lot of the work we're doing here at Amy. There's limited data. So like few long-term case studies to show all the benefits to build trust and confidence. There is an ongoing conversation about the lack of global standards. And it's challenging, like multidisciplinary needs. People come with different viewpoints, technical, legal, and social, and these people can speak different languages and see it differently. So, like I said, in 10 minutes, I don't think I'll solve the problem of trust in AI, but wanted to give some food for thought. Transparency counts enormously. Clear communication on how and when AI is being used and the particular guardrails that have been put in place to protect us is enormous. The more transparency I see in organizations, the more I see uptake in their AI tools and solutions. Accountability matters. When you don't know who is accountable to the decisions and responsible to the outcomes, it's going to be really hard to build trust. Start where trust can grow. I understand that there's this race dynamic. Everyone's being told they're being left behind. They need to take moonshots and big bets and all of this language. But there are so many applications where benefits are clear and risk can be explained and like highly mitigated and bring a lot of value. This is how you get people on board. You don't build trust with, one coffee meeting. You have to build it long and over time, but starting in kind of those low risk applications makes a big difference. And I often hear like, well, my competitor isn't doing this, it's expensive, it's complex. But I argue that like minimizing the technical and ethical debt in the systems you're building is going to pay dividends, because you're going to have to understand if there's a regulation or a compliance mechanism, or if something happens, taking that system offline and remediating is going to be a lot more challenging than building it right the first time. Feedback loops, mechanisms for user input, and where recourse can happen strengthen credibility a lot. And I put a box around this because training and literacy, that's a whole topic in itself. But the more you understand something and how it can benefit you, the more likely you are to use it and trust it. I also think knowing that, being able to unwind that nuance, being able to say, okay, that thing happened with an AI companion or a nudifying app or some other cyber outcome, that doesn't necessarily mean that this back office automation for my to help remove a tedious task is the same thing. And finally, trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets. It's tenuous. It's very, very worthwhile to invest in not only building that trust, but making sure that you don't lose it. This is delicious to me because in the Edelman Trust Barometer across institutions, there was a single thing that came out across the top around the number one thing that's trust building, and that's listening to people, understanding them, hearing their concerns. And I think it's funny because you don't need any tech skills to practice listening. And so, even as we're going through these nuanced, complex conversations where people come to the world and conversation differently, we can all do this. And with that, I really want to kind of the key takeaways here in the short 10 minutes. Trust isn't binary. It's layered, contextual, and dynamic. The safeguards really do matter. Guardrails, transparency, accountability, all of these things earn credibility. And it's a credibility that isn't a point in time. Consistently and sustained, these activities need to be put in place, and they need to grow and expand as technology scales and the capabilities increase. Trust is fragile. I won't deny that. Once it's broken, it's slow to rebuild. So don't break it. And finally, if this hasn't been clear, context matters. Trust takes different forms in different places for different people. And the more that we can start to get comfortable in the nuance and the trade-offs and eliminate binary simplification and kind of that that desire to make this one thing, the more we're going to be able to think about AI in a way that serves us as opposed to something that may harm us. So thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to have some conversations over the next few days. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about AI and trust.